Hello, it's the Anfield Wrap. It's John Gibbons hosting this week, and I'm joined by Phil Blundell, by Adam Melia, and by Mo Stewart. To talk a little bit about legends, I want to talk about the legends of this football club, and in particular Alan Hansen, who I think most people have heard is unfortunately seriously ill in hospital. So I wanted to talk about him. I wanted to talk about his legacy and just that team. And we're all a certain age. I mean, I forget how old Phil is because there's so many jokes, to be honest with you. Is he older than me? I think he's younger than me.
I'm about 5 years younger than you, John.
Where are you, though? Yeah, 7 birthdays a year. But it is fair to say that we're very much products of that 80s team.
Absolutely.
And I think, that's the reason I think a lot of people around the world might have fell in love with Liverpool. And certainly it feels like, that team that spans that decade, changed quite a lot. It obviously starts with Paisley, the winning machine. It starts, European royalty, but it goes into Kenny and everything that he did in that double winning team. There's the 87-88 team, which a lot of people say might be even in the best one. Hansen's around for all of that. Yeah. He's around for when they don't concede any goals. He's around for when they're this attacking machine. And you can make an argument that no one defines that great team more than Alan Hansen because of how he played and how he changed defending at this football club and how he changed, almost how football was played in this country.
Absolutely. I mean, it's funny because I kind of started at the end within that 88, 89, 87, 88 team. And then over the time where I become more obsessed with the club, I kind of went backwards through time. And like you say, he's like, he was there through all of those really important moments. And yeah, it's funny because when you compare him to some of the other teams that were around, he was really the one. I mean, people talk about Kane Dalglish being a generational talent, and he was, but he was the one who was doing stuff on the pitch and no one else had a version of him.
Yeah.
And suddenly everyone else really needed a version of him, but they didn't because we had him.
Yeah.
And like there's that picture that's kind of circulated over the last day or so of him and John Barnes in the speckly red candy shirt. Like that picture was on my wall.
He holds a cup so well, doesn't he? He holds a cup so well.
Fantastic. And that
he had plenty of practice.
It is. But that was kind of why I wanted that shirt so much, because it was like, I want to be a part of this gang.
Yeah.
And they all look like they're all enjoying themselves so much. And I've kind of been doing some YouTube and Twitter research of just some of the interviews from around that time as well. And it's like, it all seemed just so easy and so calm. Like, even when he was just talking about winning leagues rather than just playing football, everything just seemed to be exactly how he thought it should be. And we talk now about aura and some of the players who we've got now and the aura they have on the opponents. Like, I can't imagine what it would be like as a striker, like coming to Anfield and thinking, oh God, I got to play against him. Like, well, he's not going to give me a kick all day long, and then he's just going to give me that little wink and trot off down the other end of the pitch and like slide one in for one of their strikers. It's just like, it's just almost unfair that we had him. He was literally like a cheat code.
He was a phenomenal footballer, and it's the genius of Paisley that he spots not just how defender needs to change, Adam, and how backlines need to change, and he gets that from playing in Europe and seeing what other teams doing and learning from others, but also going, and it's going to be this midfielder from Partick Thistle who's going to sort of do it and almost sort of changes his career in a way that maybe Alan Hansen wasn't even necessarily expecting, but from that he never looks back. And you look at what he wins at Liverpool, it's eight league titles, 3 European Cups, 2 FA Cups, 4 League Cups, so it's a phenomenal body of work, and he's sort of there throughout that, like I said, as the team is changing. And I looked into it last night and I put on Twitter, my first game I went to was Hansen's last one, so I don't remember seeing him play much in the flesh. It was just sort of that last game really, but you growing up when we did, you couldn't help, it felt like he was still around because everyone still talked about him, and every defender that came was like, he's got a bit of Hansen about him, and he defines that position, like I say, in a way that I don't think you get with loads of other footballers, even great ones that obviously Liverpool have had.
Yeah, it's funny because he's almost too big to look at. It's almost, as you've said, he spans that many different great teams that I suspect he's been. He almost gets shrugged off in terms of the great names because he's just there. But that, I mean, what is defending if not that consistency? He's there with Thompson. He's there with Lawrenson. You know, they're kind of the two great pairings, aren't they? But you know, he is there, and I suppose I can't think about him as you've just said, John. I think about him as being somebody that I knew at the very end of his career. I remember his testimonial. It was against England, I think, wasn't it? I remember sort of pictures of that around the time that I was, you know, really starting to go. I think that was probably just before I went to my first game. But I think we are all the same age, basically.
Sorry, Phil.
We are. So if it's our age, then you can't help but think about things that your dad said, and so you know. Whenever any defender, basically, as you were just touching on, John, sort of through the 90s. You know, what do you think of John Scales' dad, or somebody? You know, what do you think? And it would inevitably become a conversation about Alan Hansen's clean shorts. You know, the classic. You know, the classic stereotype, or whatever you'd say about Hansen, is that he didn't need to make a slide tackle. His vision, his positioning, his pace, and his coolness was that he would seem to never have had to get his shorts dirty for his entire Liverpool career, and it was that sort of made his half of the pairing so good, you know, and so I think at that point it was probably, you know, Lawrenson that was underrated, and maybe that he's had a bit of a reappraisal in years since then, but yeah, certainly he became the defining thing, I think, probably until Virgil, you know, and I think it's the same that we've had the same experience that our dads had. I suspect with Virgil and those things that I've just talked about in terms of consistency, and you know, once they're there, they're not going anywhere. They're playing all the time, and they are extremely consistent and extremely good. So good that it gets missed.
It is that the Virgil comparison's an interesting one, you know, to me, Phil, because it must have been that sort of impact. Because I'm looking at it now. He comes in the summer of '77. It's actually September '77, and he's in and out the team in that first year. But it's the following season, '78-79, where he plays every game, and you know, it's Emlyn Hughes out, which is obviously a huge name also in Liverpool's history, but he's in. And that season, Liverpool break the record for goals conceded. Is it 15 or 16?
16 it is.
16.
4 at Anfield. Ridiculous.
But everyone talks about Hansen, you talk about him on the ball, and you talk about his brilliant play. But like, you look at that record, he comes in, and in his first full season, Liverpool don't concede any goals. And that's one of those records that you're going to be hard pushed to ever break. It's probably going to be that it's going to last for another 100 years. You sort of reckon, you know, from Liverpool's point of view, 16, and it's 42 games as well. It's 42 games in a season, and Liverpool can see 16 goals, and that's his first full season as centre back. So that is like, you know, like how we talked about Virgil. He just sort of comes in and does that, and then everything he could do on the ball as well. People must have been like, fucking hell, where do we find him?
Yeah, there was a season under Benitez where I'm pretty sure we conceded 7 at home, and I remember thinking 7's really quite low, you know. And then in 2 more games they've done 3 fewer goals, which is ridiculous. When I think Hansen, I always think he feels like a real sort of changing of how football sort of was and how defenders were seen. I think, I know there wasn't quite an overlap, but Larry Lloyd's obviously much more known for what he did for Nottingham Forest, and he leaves 3 years before Hansen signs. But I'm pretty sure there was a line around him that I remember hearing, because he died quite recently, Larry Lloyd, and it was sort of that Liverpool didn't think that they'd be truly successful with him because he wasn't quite what he wanted to do. He was basically a sort of kick it and head it away, and he was a sort of very sort of meat and potatoes basic defender. And then Alan Hansen comes along a few years later, and it's just so radically different. Like the thing that stands out for me in terms of on the ball, I don't know if anyone's some people have seen this, some people won't, but I think it's a Manchester United away game where he's got the ball on the halfway line, and he basically plays himself through one-on-one with the keeper.
We were talking about that in the office before.
It's so alien to what sort of early 70s centre-backing was. It was just so radically different. You used to basically, I'm pretty sure if you watch videos from sort of late 60s, early 70s, they do exist. You can go out and find these things. Centre-backs were basically there to sort of jump on things, throw themselves in front of balls, head things away, basically find people in the channels, and that's what football was. It was a sort of very basic, you defend, you midfield, you attack, whereas Hansen felt like he was sort of doing all three of these things. Like, I mean, one of the reasons you do see this clip is because Kenny Dalglish effectively misses an open goal in incredible circumstances. Like, I don't really understand how he managed to miss, but that's the thing for me with Hansen, how sort of radically different he was, and he could do all the defending things, but quite a lot of the time didn't really need to, because he was so good at sort of being aware and getting on the ball and moving the ball and using the ball, and it was just, it's such a, like, the first sort of example of modern football, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. You talked before about him just sort of, being omnipresent, and that's like you were talking about for the period, but also Jordan's seasons, how available he was. So there's one year towards the end, 88-89, where he misses the most through injury, and that's the injury that effectively means he sort of has to retire. But apart from that, and his first season where like I said, when he's breaking through, he plays over 40 games in every season. It's actually only between 40 and 50 twice in that sort of whole period. Does anyone want to guess how many times he played in 83-84? How many appearances? It's really funny. It's silly.
It's either like, are we talking this is high?
Yeah.
Okay, 83.
So yeah, we
win the treble, so there's a lot of games.
61.
No, that's higher.
Wow, fair enough. They must have played.
It's 67 times he plays. What? He plays 13 League Cup games, and I'm thinking surely there's someone else who couldn't play York away. Do you know what I mean? But obviously sort of not. Rotation wasn't sort of happening. But that's one of 3 times he plays 60 games plus in a season. By the way, it's just insane.
But that's the attitude again, isn't it? It's like the idea of rotation or rest, or the fact that maybe you want to save your best players for certain games. It didn't exist then. It was Liverpool were playing a game, so Alan Hansen was playing for Liverpool.
Yeah.
It was that simple. And I just think the way that he was able to do all those things, the other thing we kind of take for granted is that when he was doing this, when he was able to bring the ball out of defence, the one that I always think of is when he set up the goal for Rush against Everton.
Yeah, the 5-0.
Yeah, so he basically steals it off I forget which Everton striker it was, but he steals the ball off him before he even knows the ball's coming to him, nips it around another one, and then just slides a perfect ball in between another 2 defenders right into Rush's path. And he was doing all that, and you think about football now, you think about the pitches now, and they're all carpets. He was doing that on trampolines, basically, by comparison. And think about the way that players are protected now, the kind of fouls you aren't allowed to do. Players were hacking, like coming at him shin high. Because when you know that you've got a guy who can do that, the first thing the opponents are going to try and do is make him not do that. And the easiest way to do that is to try and kick him up in the air. But he was dropping shoulders left, right and centre, and they just couldn't get near him. And I think when you think about someone playing like that now, they would be lauded as in the same way, like you say, the comparison to Virgil. But to be doing it then, it's almost alien.
I think there's a few things that we maybe haven't touched on. I kind of love how like his youthfulness. There's something about him coming in that changed that team from an old-fashioned team into like a modern team. And
you were cooler, weren't you?
Yeah, there's something about Hansen. It just seemed even as I say, his testimonial still looks like really young. And the other thing, which is kind of linked, is his aura, which I think comes through probably more for me anyway. With his TV career. But I suspect that was, I mean, I'm sure it must have been, but, I wasn't around. It must have been there all the time, anybody interviewing him. I've heard John Keith talking really well about Hansen and a lot of other Liverpool legends of that time. I really like listening to John Keith talking about.
He's got a nice voice.
Yeah, he's got a great voice, and he does a good impression too. He's got a great
impression.
He's got a great Shankly impression. But yeah,
I always wind Neil up saying in 20 years you're going to be like John Keith doing your Klopp impressions.
I mean, he does a great. There's a great. He sits down with Lawrenson for an hour, John Keith, and talks about the different signing himself, and talk a lot about Hansen there. But anyway, sorry, I digress. The Hansen aura is something that you can just. It's difficult to describe, but you know what I'm talking about if you saw him on TV in the 90s. And I actually saw him in person in the 90s and felt it. It was in the bottom of Lewis's, looking at fridges, and suddenly Alan Hansen was behind me, and my mate said to me, "Hansen." Honestly, there's something about the man which doesn't maybe come across because he's kind of gangly, but he's huge in person, and that voice is huge, and there's something that it kind of belies his aura with that sort of youthful smile and his youthful qualities, because he was clearly, as soon as somebody speaks, you hear a leader, and I think that's the thing that maybe is kind of missed with all the photos of it after the event. He's holding the cup and he's smiling his beautiful smile, but he's been fighting like anything to get there. And Everton will tell you, they hated him, and there was this kind of like controversial thing with his handball in the semi-final, was it? Oh, yeah. Some of them still call him Alan Handball, but his enemies and our enemies will tell you what a leader he was, and what an absolute nightmare to get through that must have been because of that sort of huge figure that he was for all those years.
Yeah, and as Adam Melia talked before, Phil, about what your dad said about him and stuff like that, and he was one of those, wasn't he? And in the pantheon of greats for Liverpool. And listen, we're fortunate to support the team we do, and there's loads of great players, who we did see and who we didn't, and I'll sort of come on to a few more of those in a little while. But he was one that always seemed to be sort of elevated to sort of a cut above, really. Like, if you played for Liverpool between 1965 and 1990, you were a bad footballer, do you know what I mean? But there were certain ones who were almost elevated to a status beyond that, and he always felt like he was one of them for those who were lucky enough to go every week in that period.
Yeah, well, it sort of feels like there's tiers, isn't there? Yeah. Where there's sort of one in every position is the best one. Like Clements was the best goalkeeper, Hansen was the best defender, Souness was the best midfielder, and then Dalglish was the best of the attackers. And then sort of everything sort of feeds down from that, doesn't it? And that's that he is the defender, tells you everything about Liverpool at this period. There's European Cups, there's lads from Liverpool who played centre-back and captain Liverpool for the European Cup who aren't held in the same esteem. They're held in esteem. Obviously, Phil Thompson is thought of fantastically, but that someone can come in after him and be above him in that sort of pantheon it just says a lot about him. I think it almost feels like he's not just the Liverpool thing though as well, because he's so well known for his TV work. I think like his voice is on Three Lions. Yeah. Sort of tells you sort of how big he was after football as well. I was surprised to find out, he's not been on Match Day for 10 years. Yeah. It feels like it doesn't feel like it's 10 years since he gave that one up. But the fact that he was on that every 20 plus years, the main pundit at what must have been 5 or 6, 7 tournaments. This is like someone who sort of, it goes bigger than Liverpool almost, but it's also that he gets there because he's so big for Liverpool, and he does everything that he does. Well, I'd forgotten he actually starts with Sky, and Sky give him a bit of a go, and then BBC go, fucking hell, I got a minute, and then just nab him, and he doesn't go. And we talked about how he changed defending, but he changed football punditry as well, I think, Mo, and you're someone obviously who talks very intelligent about the game and stuff like that, and how he sort of changes that, I think will be talked about for years to come as well. And it's easy to think it's always been like it is now with Monday Night Football and stuff like that, but it hasn't been. No. And when we started watching football, it was sort of really basic, and he took it to another level in terms of analysing how goals were scored and where mistakes were being made famously and stuff like that. But just making I remember him being the first one who was making me think about the game a little bit more than what I was used to. Absolutely, I'm exactly the same. So I spent a lot of time watching football because I was either watching football on TV or I was watching my dad play football, and I had a kind of an understanding of it, but I didn't realise how little I actually knew about how and why
things were happening and what things should happen and what things shouldn't happen. And it was literally like, I'd learned a new language just from watching Alan Hansen talk about the game, because he was so different to everyone else. Everyone else on TV, there were personalities, they had opinions, but it was all often like they were trying to make themselves known for these opinions. They weren't really trying to teach you anything. And that was the thing with Alan Hansen. You came away feeling like you actually learned something every time he was there. And yeah, when he got into his older time, he had these kind of crutches that he leaned on, like you got to play percentages and all that. I'm not going to do the accent now. But there were reasons why they became such totems, because they were so true, and they were so true of when he was a player, but also so true of the game as it was evolving. And you never felt like he was out of step, even though he was no longer there playing football. He always was understanding the game as it was evolving. And you think about it now, look at Gary Lineker. So, I mean, I imagine he was the reason why Sky decided, BBC tried to poach him from Sky, because it was like, we've got this guy, now we need the Yang to go alongside him. And the way that they were so great together, like I've got some old VHSs of old Match of the Days and stuff like that, where it's just the two of them, and obviously they kind of faced each other a lot on the pitch, but the way that they were able to be, Gary can be so calm and nice, but Alan would be like, well, no. Sometimes you've got to call it as it is. You've got to say, this guy made a mistake. I mean, he should not have done it that way. And it's just about life in some ways. You need someone who can be there to be the kind person, to put your arm around his shoulder and say, you know what, it's all right. But then you've got the other person who can take your side and say, you know what, you fucked that up and you needed to learn. And they were such a great combination between the two of them, and I feel like all football punditry since then has been trying to get that combination right, and you can see when it happens, and sometimes they do get it right, but it's never going to be like that.
Okay, we're going to take a short break now. When we come back, we're going to talk a little bit about just the general remarkable influence on Scotsmen on our football club, which is really interesting. We're going to talk a little bit more about that glorious team of the 1980s and how it went around the world. But first of all, last week, Tony Cavey from the Florrie came in to talk a little bit about the work that they were doing. You've probably seen little bits before from the work they did with Nivea Men in terms of the Florrie walks there, and when they went to AXA training ground and had a little tour and met Andy Robertson and things like that. But on Thursday they're doing a 24-hour walk, so we wanted to get Tony in to talk about that, and then when we come back it'll be more on this fabulous football club.
It's John Gibbons with Tony Cavey from the Florrie, well, from the Dingle, from the match, from Liverpool Football Club. But we're here to talk about one particular big thing that the Florrie got coming up with the walk, but just to talk about the history of the walk, because it's been quite phenomenal, really. Obviously, you were there from sort of day one with it, and it was something, you know, I know that came out of lockdown and things like that, but people will have seen, we've had you on before, sort of talking about it in a little video. But before we talk about this 24-hour walk you've got coming up, if anyone needs, you know, the memory jogging a little bit, talk us about the history of the Florrie walk.
Well, like you say, it started in lockdown, more or less, but the severity of it come after lockdown, when we were bumping into fellas, Liverpool and Everton fans, never been in the house so long, you know, things like that, just never been spent so long with kids and family, and they're all like, you know, stressed or what have you. So we just thought after it, we'll carry it on. And like through yourselves and like Liverpool, within like 9 weeks, we were going to see Andy Robertson. It just took it to another level, got a bit of awareness. I thought, we're on something here, do you know what I mean? So like Tim O'Turney in the Florrie, just carried on, just snowballed from there. There was more fellas coming, and like over 100 fellas a month now come.
Wow.
And then we done the follow-on video with yourselves, which was brilliant. It helped us a lot, which generated a worldwide thing through that thing, because we're getting fellas from like Mumbai and Sydney and like Adelaide and Las Vegas who were saying, we've set a walk up through your walk.
Incredible. Under
the hashtag Never Alone.
Yeah.
Which was brilliant, and like, it was unbelievable. We've had fellas come over, you know, like Quinn. He's come over from America. He knows give us a boss story about how it like helped him when he was like at his darkest. But it's just like, it's gone on from there. But now we've got like avenues of employment, and like we help fellas with counselling, and you know, we started a bit of our own merchandise, which all goes back in to help, you know, just recycle and organically help other fellas.
And it's one of many ways that the Florrie is helping people within your community, but also obviously belong as well, beyond as well. I'm sure you don't have to, come from L8 or whatever to access the services. And there's something for everyone, is what I would say. And so there's stuff going on, day and night there. You've got the dedicated staff and volunteers who are doing stuff, but if people do look, the walks are great. What you're doing for men, but there's if something else is for something, the table tennis and stuff like that.
Yeah, but like the Florrie, it's like a bit of therapy. When yourself, when you walk in, you can't help but feel some kind of something going on there. But wherever you come in, you're greeted and you leave with a smile, and like there's something in there for everyone, like you say. Whether that's playing chess, whether that's a dyslexia class, or like there's Tai Chi, there's Timo's guitar class, which is massive. The yoga's massive. There's something for everyone if they go in, and it's all free. The activities are all free. And like, because I'm like community fundraiser, I have to jump on them to get the funds and the donations off them.
Well, I mean, that's partly obviously what next week's all about, but obviously it's about showcasing what you guys do with the walk. But next Thursday, this is going out on Monday, so this Thursday, you're doing a 24-hour walk. Yeah,
we started it last year. We done it last year on one day, which was Men's Mental Health Day. And it was the end of October and the weather was atrocious, and like we say, we've got fellas right through the card. We've got like lads who've suffered through substance abuse, and like we've got fellas with dementia, and we've got fellas who are blind, you know what I mean, and fellas who've just come for loneliness from Warrington, fellas who've seen us and just come. So there's a mixture of everything, and so it was a bit harsh on them because the weather was atrocious. We walked right through the night. It's like a play on words, really. We're not cheating anyone. We do it in 4-hour stints. You know what I mean? You took your 10 miles. So each group, say there's 10 lads in each group. They've done 100 miles. They come back, pass the baton on. The next one goes. We go right through the night in 4-hour stints. And it was a bit of a success last year. We're getting more public. We didn't like promote it as well as I thought we could have, but because it was a short thing. So this year, there's a month of mental health. So we said, why not? Well, in the summer, we'll do it in the summer this year. And like, we've got like yourselves jumping on. We've got the Man Hug, who are going to come along and record an interview on the right. We've got Speak Out, Raw and Real, Transalpino, the lads from Transalpino. We've had other fellas jump on. My cousin Vinny, they're helping out. Like, so we've got a good little click going here next week.
Yeah, I've cocked out a little bit. I'm doing 2 p.m. till 6 p.m, which, Tony sent me the list, and I was like, that one will do for me. Fair play to Tism and that lot doing the 2 a.m. stints and stuff like that, like the real hardcore. But, people see us out and about, give you the beep and a wave and stuff like
great.
that.
Yeah, well, they do anyway. A lot of people are good last year because of the awareness that we raised. But I think like what we're trying to do is like, you can get hold of me, Tony at the Florrie.com, or even just DM on the Florrie, one of the Florrie socials. Come and join us, pick a stint and come and get involved in us. You'll enjoy it, you know what I mean? You will, and you'll feel good off it. It goes a long way. You're helping us, it'll go a long way, like.
So that leads me on. If people want us to support it, there's still obviously slots to do the walks if you want to do that as well. But also if people, maybe you can't get down there, they live in other parts of the country or the world, or for whatever reason it doesn't sort of work for them, but they want to support it because it is a fundraiser, isn't it?
Yeah, you can donate. We have a QR code and we donate. No matter, we're not after big things. £1 if we give it to the lads, and some of the older fellas don't know about the technology and of a QR code or donating. So we give them sponsorship forms, and like just one member of each of the family say just get £1. They come with 20 members of the £20. It's everything. £1 each goes a long way to what we want to do. Do you know what I mean? It doesn't have to be a big thing. So if anyone can help by donating, you've gone above and beyond for us, like.
Because donations keep you going, they keep the lights on, but also everything that you're doing, and it's not just the activities, it's obviously the food pantry and stuff like that. You're doing so much in the community.
Like I say, recycled, organic. Like my cousin Vinny, we've got an in-house mental health counsellor. Curtis, our friend, he lost his brother Vinny through suicide, and he's gone and done his own thing. He's become a mental health counsellor. So he looks after some of the lads. If they ever go and speak to need to speak something, like I say, in-house, they'll go and see him, and it's all in-house, do you know what I mean? And that's why the merchandise helps, again, turn over. So it's going all right at the minute. And like I say, we were 2 years old about 2 months ago. And when you think like yourself, we owe a lot to Anfield Wrap and that for what they've done. It's like to say Nivea and Liverpool just took us to a next level, with the Andy Robertson thing. And then the follow-on videos took us worldwide. When I think of just getting lads out talking, which was just end this stigma. I've always talked, you know what I mean? What a lot of us, the lads at the match, you seem to crack on more at the match, openly with strangers even. Like there's fellas at the match, And you can't fathom this anyway when I tell them. I've known fellas at the match, been going to the match since I was 7. There's fellas I've known for 40 odd years. If you took me out of the match like atmosphere and put me in a night here with your missus or something, I just know him as Mick from the match. And you've got nothing to say to him, but you go back to Anfield and you're like brothers that you've known, and you don't know nothing about him, his second name or where he's from, but you're close at the match. The match have always had that like thing, I think, you know, where you can crack on and talk to each other.
Yeah, but this is more of that. And I think, you know, I know people who've got so much from the walk. There's friends I've got who've been down and just said they've got a lot from it. And you must have, you know, 100 stories of people it's just helped them so much.
Well, look, I'm no counsellor, you know what I mean, John? First and foremost, it's still helping me as well, which is why I was set it off. I don't want to go too serious about some of the stories, but even up until the last few months, I've been trying, and fellas who were trying to, you know, on top, I turned up just as one was trying to do something to himself, you know what I mean? And like, it's just always there, And if there's like, we've got the WhatsApp group. We had a lad today, and he come in and he said, blah, blah, he's on his path. He come in, put him in the WhatsApp group. And it's there purely just for like a contact. You can get in, you know, a feel good every morning, good morning, and fellas can like, if you've got one of, get something off your chest. I know it can be horrible, social media sometimes, but this is a good little thing. Just something simple as a WhatsApp group, those good things.
Yeah, I know it's fantastic what you're doing, and we should give a shout out as well before we finish to the thing you're doing at Glastonbury. This is the second year for that as well, a big walk. Some of the lads who were going down to Glastonbury want to get the weekly walk in, and they're doing it down there. And well, like, it started last year, but it looks like it's going to be bigger this year.
Yeah, well, mental health doesn't stop, does it? So, like, you go in there, it's at the Tony Bent stage on the Friday, 10 o'clock. They all meet. I think there was about like 10 or 12 of them met last time. Some of them didn't quite get there in time. So we've tried to pump it a bit earlier this year to get it. And we've got the socials out on that now. So, you know, if anyone's going to Glastonbury, by all means, get the Tony Bent Tower, I think it's called. Tony Bent Tower at 10 o'clock on the Friday. Get out, walk Florrie.
So, yeah, Florrie walk away, the Glastonbury if you are going, all the details are there. But if you can support, obviously, the 24-hour event, it's on Thursday, 10 a.m. to 10 a.m. As I say, I'm doing the 2 till 6 p.m. slot, looking forward to that. But it's theflorrie.org if you want to support all the fantastic things that the Florrie are doing. They're a brilliant part of this wonderful city. But, okay, man, thanks for coming in.
Well in, John. Thank you.
Okay, we are back in now. Thanks a lot to Tony for coming in, and obviously do support the Florrie if you can. But we're going to go on to talk just a little bit more, Phil, about, like I said before, the almost kind of remarkable influence Scotland as a country has had on Liverpool in particular, and you know, obviously the influence on English football is there. You know, certainly in the early years, there was a lot of sort of Scottish players come down for Liverpool. They were called the team of Max because it was so sort of omnipresent. But then you think about Bill Shankly and the first team he built, and there was loads of great players. But again, like we said before, in the 80s there were certain players. You know, when Shankly talked about the players who really changed the team, it was Ron Yates and St John, and they were the two who when they came down took Liverpool to another level. And you know, it's one at the back and one up top that really fires Liverpool, and they're the stars of that period. And you know, they move on to the 80s, and it's like Mo said before, it's Souness, it's Hansen, it's Dalglish, and it is really something now. And I love that we've still got Scotland's captain playing for us. It sort of feels right to me, but it is, you know, it is quite a thing just how much influence, as I say, going all the way back to 1892 that Scotland's had on Liverpool Football Club.
We had the very first squad. If you're Googling on the Wikipedia page, I think it's basically 3 English players and everybody else is Scottish, which feels a bit mad when you think about what life must have been like in the 1890s
it was a much
as well.
world,
like in terms of, I feel like people weren't travelling to that extent, and it wasn't quite as transient as that, but evidently, well, within England anyway, but evidently it was for football. But yeah, if you think about, it's hard to think about a Liverpool team that's been successful without a Scottish person. It sort of feels like Steve Nicol was probably the last one before Robertson. It feels like there was a big gap. There was McAllister, obviously, but sort of he was obviously 2 years, was never a big player for Liverpool, but there's a massive gap between things when it used to be, oh yeah, there's a Scottish player, be it Ron Yates, St John, and then building forward, and it was gradually, there's more Scottish players, and now there's Robertson. It feels like something that Liverpool basically have to do to ensure they're good is just find a Scottish player and put him in the team. Maybe that was Benitez's biggest fault. He just didn't find anyone Scottish enough to put in his team. But yeah, Scotland and, to be fair, all areas of the UK and Ireland have probably played a big part in Liverpool, but it feels like Scotland's probably played the most significant part outside of England, obviously. Like, there's probably more iconic Scottish players than there are people from Liverpool, really, when you think about it, which is a bit mad.
Yeah. There's a funny story from the 80s, Adam, where it's Hansen and Souness. Obviously, Souness ends up going, and Dalglish, and they're saying, talking about, the Scottish are the superior race, and we're smarter and we're better and stuff like that. And then they're like, then Steve Nicol turned up, and they're like, yeah, he was lowering the tone. I think it is fair to say. Obviously, a wonderful footballer, but wasn't thought to be the sharpest. But yeah, you can just imagine Hansen and Dalglish loading it up. You talked about that order before. You can just imagine them sort of loading it up in the dressing room and very much ruling the roost.
The three of them, Hansen, Dalglish and Souness, I mean, yeah, in different ways, different types of leaders, but what a sort of intimidating thing, and I guess if once you were in the club, an encouraging thing, an amazing thing to have on your side. It's, I love the fact that there's such a big Scottish presence as well, and as Phil said, it's sort of the story we tell, the story that is Liverpool starts with Shankly, of course, and his story, his signings, his first team is the Ron Yates thing. My centre half is a Colossus, walk around him. Ian St John, I think probably isn't as storied as he should be if you watch videos of him, and in a similar way to Hansen, he defined broadcasting for that generation too, the generation before, with kind of Saint and Greavesy, and I guess Jimmy Hill. That's what I think of as pre Hansen broadcasting wise. And yeah, and we sort of giggle about Steve Nicol, but God, he was footballer of the year 2-3 years in a row, wasn't he?
No, fantastic player,
unbelievable player. Just yeah, as you say, and yeah, I think that's the Robertson thing's funny because it almost felt as if, again, probably this is a dad generation comment, but it was like this is the final piece of the jigsaw. What Liverpool need to be successful is a Scottish player to be slotted in. But yeah, it's something that I'm, I don't know. I've sort of weirdly have pride for, even though I'm not Scottish myself. But I love that the idea of that kind of relationship. It makes it makes us feel like the kind of the capital city of a certain part of something that we kind of don't think we are. The Celtic nature of the place. But yeah, and it's right that there are more Scottish legends than Scouse ones, as it stands.
So full disclosure, as a boy from Kent growing up, just becoming a Liverpool fan, I actually thought that the Scottish accent was actually part of Scouse. I thought it was a version of a Scouse accent because there were so many of them. And you mentioned Ian St John. Like, one of my biggest intros was I had the VHS of the greatest ever Liverpool team as picked by Ian St John. So he basically went through the whole team, every position by position, and he gave you like 4 or 5 different options for each position. And he was talking about all his players, and he was talking about Shankly, he talked about Ron Yates, he actually talked about Steve Nicol. I think Steve Nicol actually made it into that greatest ever team. Yeah. I think this was like 86, 87, it was being done. But it was very much like, well, they're us. And there wasn't a perceptible difference between Scottish and Scousers. So I just assumed that they were all part of the same thing. And then you think about the attitude, like, I mean, maybe not the entirety of Scotland, but certainly large swathes of Scotland. You go there and you'll think that there's a people who fight for, they're happy to fight for their neighbour against whoever else is out there trying to fight against them. There's so many similarities in that kind of attitude. But I love it. And even someone like Ray Houghton, who technically was Irish, he was Scottish as well. Like it was just like it was part of the lifeblood of the club. There were some kind of weird kind of kinship between the two of them. And I still feel that now, to be honest. Like when I go to Scotland, I go to Glasgow, it does feel very similar to the feeling I get when I'm here.
Liverpool's right in the middle of the British Isles, sort of people don't think about it. This is rearing quite close to the infrastructure chat, so stop. If you sort of draw a cross in the centre of the British Isles, Liverpool's that one there. So I think that it's not an unnatural or an unusual thing that we kind of feel when we go to Dublin, feel when we go to Glasgow, feel your Belfast, Cardiff, and
you see it different elements of yourself.
Yes, I think so.
I suppose if you just come down the west of England.
The West Coast Main Line.
It's basically the first, but it is basically the first big city you get to, really, if you think about it. And there's port. Like, just looking at, I've basically Googled stuff and some of the, even you don't think about before that, like Matt Busby.
Yeah.
Billy Liddell.
Of course, yeah.
But Tommy Lawrence apparently classes as Scottish on the thing. These are important parts of Liverpool history from even before.
Liddell's huge.
Liddell, like, was... I think we're at the point where pretty much nobody now has seen Billy Liddell, but people sort of, you go back 20 years, people used to be like, oh, yeah, he was incredible.
I think if you'd have done a thing in 1970, say for example, said who's Liverpool's best ever player, it probably would have been Liddell.
Yeah.
Well, Billy Liddell was on that video I was talking about. He made it in.
Of course.
I think it was actually him and Kenny were up front.
Yeah, it's not bad.
Yeah, it's not bad.
Well, we're going to come on to Liverpool players who wish with live, but it is a thing. But just to go back to you, Mel, on that team of the 80s generally and what a sort of an impact it's had. And you meet so many people of a certain age from different places of the world, and you say, why do you support Liverpool? And they might say that team. And I think it helped the FA Cup finals famously on telly and stuff like that. I remember meeting the cricketer Ashwell Prince and said, why do you support Liverpool? And he's like, well, it was one of the cup finals against Everton. I can't remember if it was 86 or 89, but it was that team. And he was like, well, red was my favourite colour, so I stuck up for the team in red. But how that team went around the world, and not just for what they were winning, but how they were playing, the style, which obviously Alan Hansen's a big part of. Dr. Dre's famously a Liverpool fan because he watched Liverpool 5, Nottingham Forest 0, which is an insane thing. But imagine watching that game and not being a Liverpool fan afterwards.
Exactly.
You know what I mean? It was like a lot of panache. But Dre wasn't the only one who was sort of falling in love with Liverpool because of that side.
Absolutely. I mean,
Because of those sides, because more than one.
Yeah, I mean, I dare say there was probably one fella who Dre was kind of zeroing in on. The same fella who I was zeroing in on. So Mr. Barnes. Because he was very much the dasher in that team. But you think back to it, like I specifically came into that 87-88 team, and you had him, you had Peter Beardsley, John Aldridge, Ray Houghton. And it's hard to think about it now, but we just lost like the greatest striker in the history of the club. He'd gone, and they were like, well, what are they going to do? Oh, here's what we're going to do. We're going to make the team better. And it was almost like that was the standard of what Liverpool are about. It's like there is always going to be more than one player, and that team was such a collective. Like you throw in Steve McMahon, Ronnie Whelan. Obviously, we talk about Alan Hansen, Steve Nicol. I put Lawrenson in there as well. I had Bruce Grobbelaar in goal. That's nearly the whole team, isn't it? Who am I saying at right back?
He would have been right back at that team because Phil Neal sort of moved on from there. Abler would have played a little bit. Yeah.
Sometimes they played three centre halves.
Was Beglin in that team?
I think Beglin was injured by then.
Yeah.
I think
Spackman was around as well.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
But this is the thing. Like I could still remember so many of those teams and so many of those goals. A lot of it was down to that VHS video. But so many of the times it wasn't just. So you think about goals now and you'll be like, oh, one person does something fantastic and that's why you remember the goal. Now all those goals were us just basically playing teams off the park, just passing it around, cutting them open, and then someone would be there with a tap in to just say, oh, well, there you go, this is Liverpool football, this is what we can do. And yet they were all so talented, they were all so incredible. And you do kind of think about how when you come into football, you're looking to find something to enjoy. It is meant to be something that we all enjoy. It's easy to forget that sometimes. But having a team who look like they're enjoying it, who are causing joy to everybody who's watching it, that's what you really want. And yeah, like, so famously, my dad didn't force me to become a Tottenham fan, for which is probably the greatest thing he's ever done for me. He allowed me to pick my own team. And yes, it did help the fact that Liverpool were on more than everyone else. Like that run of 88, 89, even the semi-final of 1990 against Palace, I still vividly remember that game, unfortunately. But those were the times when they were just the biggest game in the whole season, and Liverpool were in it. And then, obviously, 1989, the Arsenal, the Michael Thomas. So even when it wasn't going Liverpool's way, they were still
part
there.
Of the story, yeah.
They were still part of the story. And yeah, there's no one else you can think of as the team of the 80s. Absolutely.
Yeah, well, I mean, what they win, Phil, and how they do it, and the stories across the decade, you know, is quite something. And there's football clubs who don't pack it as much of the whole existence as Liverpool did in the 80s. And, you know, Hansen isn't the only one who's sort of omnipresent, you know, throughout it all, really. But he is there. But, you know, it was, you know, if Shankly's the sort of, you know, seen as the father of the modern day Liverpool, it's that period that I think is almost the reason why Liverpool is still as big as it is.
Yeah, it defines everything. I think Mo's talking about the like watching videos and things. Like I'm a little bit younger, and we still watch those videos in the 90s, mainly because the 90s wasn't very good.
Yeah.
But you know, I say it wasn't very good. Relatively wasn't very good. There's a lot of teams who did bitten hands off for a FA Cup and a League Cup and a couple of title challenges. But for Liverpool, it wasn't a good period. But you still had that to go back to and look at, and it still defined what the club was. I think it was such a golden age that you were never going to look back on that period and not think that it was incredible. And it, you know, it'll probably be never relived by any club going forward. Like, even you think about the dominance that Manchester City have got now, it still isn't at the same level as what Liverpool were doing, really, is it? It's very impressive what they're doing from a purely footballing point of view, and you can get into the external factors to that if you want to. But from a football point of view, it shows how good this Liverpool team was, that they are able to compete with a team who are in the same, you know, in that level of dominance, if you like. It was incredible period. Like, I just look at, there was a weird thing, I was just looking at Hansen's Wikipedia, is on 26 Scotland caps, he won 26 medals. 25 of them were at Liverpool. There was one at Partick Thistle, but it's 25, and okay, some of them are charity shields and so on and so forth, but you still had to win things to get into the charity shield generally. And it's just a ridiculous thing that a player can come here and just win 25 medals. Like, it's absurd.
Yeah. The funny thing about the England caps is, like I said before, he plays 67
Scotland.
Scotland.
You'll have a lot of Scottish people on your back there, John.
Listen, we played Scotland a lot. That was a slip of the tongue. He played 67 times in that 83-84 season. In that year, he gets 0 caps for Scotland. So it's just like shows like he's winning the treble, playing every game. At 83, he gets 1 cap, and at 84, he gets none. What on earth is going on? What in the Ferguson is going on there?
I wonder what he's saying to Kenny about this, because Kenny got like 100. It's just like,
tell them I'm good, you know. I'm aware. Tell them I'm
It
all right.
sort of carries through with us with England as well, because I feel like Liverpool have basically had 2 proper England regulars.
Because they always pick Spurs players.
Yeah, but if you think about it, if you take Owen and Gerrard out, what England regulars have there been in any of your mainstays of the England team in your life? It's really low, and it's really a bit weird.
Yeah. And the only 2 I could think of who really came close were basically constantly being ripped. And that's Barnes and McManaman.
Heskey probably fits the same criteria.
Everyone just wants
Barnes
to
is
drop
a great
him
example of it, and it sort of almost feels like Liverpool were not taken seriously to some extent. That's probably not the right way of phrasing it, but it just feels a little bit peculiar.
Yeah, it was almost like people assumed that they didn't care about the countries as much as they cared about Liverpool, and whether or not that was just an easy stereotype to play because Liverpool were winning everything in sight, and England even Scotland absolutely weren't. But by the way, just an aside, did you know that today's the 40th anniversary of that goal by John Barnes in American Hour against Brazil?
I did not.
40 years ago today. That makes us all feel old. Because like I
Well,
was,
not really. I wasn't born.
Well, no, it was a long time ago. Stop trying to claim you're young, Phil. No one's buying it.
but that again, that was something that it was held against him for the rest of his England career for the next 10 years or whatever he played for.
Why didn't he do that again? Yeah. Well, would you like a list of reasons?
Yes.
It's always struck me as a little bit peculiar when I think about what Liverpool have been doing the last 20 years, but somehow there's barely any. It's part of the reason I don't particularly care about England. It's like the mid-90s watching Robbie Fowler, and it's like, why is he not playing for England? And I get that Alan Shearer was good and Sheringham was good, but why is he not playing for England?
I mean, I can't lie, I cared. I really did care. Like, I kind of still do care in a strange way. Like, so, Jamie Redknapp's 45 minutes for England against Scotland in Euro 96. I still remember that game thinking, okay, well, this is it. He's going to be in the team forever now. They can't not pick him after that. And they didn't.
Yeah, well, he got injured, didn't he? Yeah, there was.
They definitely couldn't pick him after that.
Okay, let's have a little bit of fun for the rest of the show and talk about Liverpool players. Any Liverpool players we wish we would have seen live. So, like I said, I only saw Alan Hansen once, but I did sort of see him play in the flesh. But there'll be quite a few, I think, over the years who, when you see them, you just think, oh, we should have been able to see him. Is anyone got to jump onto me? I'll go to you, Mo, first. You're looking directly at me, which is a good sign.
So, the most obvious one is obviously John Barnes. I think it's funny as well because I watched him a lot. And I mean, I studied him a lot. And I thought I was watching his every move because I was kind of obsessed with him as a kid. But then that was before I'd ever been to a live football match. And then you go to a football match and you're like, hang on a minute, there's so much happening on this pitch that you don't see on TV because the cameras aren't showing it, or the cameras have decided to show something else. And just seeing someone making their space for themselves, or just the imperceptible kind of little drops of shoulders or moves, or one little step over here or a little acceleration there, and you see it now in modern players. And I look back to some of the goals he scored and I just think, wow, to have been there to see that, to be like walking home from the match thinking about, did you see that thing that he just did? Like, he would be my ultimate number one all day, every day. But my other one is the guy who wasn't there really anywhere near enough, which is Peter Beardsley. Because again, he was someone who, in all of those videos, he was right up there. And then you think about the kind of player he was for Newcastle, and you just think, I would love to be able to see someone who's just got that intelligence, that skill, that imperceptible kind of like voodoo knowledge of exactly where everyone else is on the pitch and where he can do the most damage. Like, those are the players I always love.
Yeah, Adam?
The funny thing about watching live football is there's an imperceptible thing, and it's almost like a love story we have with players when you see them every week. Their running style and I suppose it's a bit of an aura. People, their smile. It's really like it gets embedded in you in a way that like a close friend would. So, I mean, current players, Robertson's running style is just like, it's just when he came back from injury last season, I was like, I forgot about like the way he runs. It's so distinctive. You could pick him out if it was just a silhouette. Gerrard always felt the same. So my one, I think, is Emlyn Hughes, because I think that's like, there's something about the way that he's always talked about, and it's just prior to our, I think, the era that we've mainly been talking about. I just would love to have seen that in the flesh, because there was something, when there's songs written about him, about his crazy gangly style, but that's what I kind of like. That there's something there that is part of what I love about football. It's just there's something about seeing a lad who's got a particular type of run. Coupled with an incredible player and a magnetic personality, which he had. So yeah, and when you asked that question, John, and when you emailed it as well, it's actually something that's been occurring to me recently anyway, and it may be it's because I've been thinking about it since as I say, Robertson came back from injury. But yeah, there's something about Emlyn Hughes, and I'd probably put in the same sort of era. Somebody that I've always kind of been intrigued about, just like leading up to before Dalglish. I don't want to take everyone's answers, but Kevin Keegan as well.
Yeah,
I love players like that, and I think there's something about him that defined that just before we became pure footballing class. The things that I love about Liverpool teams is, you know, sheer effort and fight and gnarl and you know, I always like that in our teams. So I'll have those two from sort of before the VHS kind of like 80s era.
Oh, that's a good shout.
I was actually going to say Keegan as well, just to think
Sorry, Phil.
it's okay. It's obviously
all
good.
just
It's
nice.
obviously a good answer,
It's all
isn't it?
just
It's
nice.
obviously a good
At least
answer.
I nearly
I had a couple of names lined up. Keegan was one of them, and a sort of, I think part of the reason with him is it almost feels like, on a wider scale, he's not as related to Liverpool as he probably should be. Like, it almost feels like because he sort of was playing for Newcastle as things sort of started to really pick up in football, and then he obviously managed Newcastle in obviously really almost glorious circumstances, that he feels more widely related from outside Liverpool to possibly Newcastle, and I don't think that necessarily is how it should be. And I would like to go and watch that. I think there's also,
Do you know where they madly love him? Man City. So you speak to them, they
yeah,
love
I
him.
can imagine.
They're really fond
He got
of that.
He got them out the.
Yeah, got them promoted to the. But then I think he's really fondly thought of him. Man
I think
City.
that they used to have some mad players. Like, I think they have George Weah and
Yeah, it's just a team they're fond of.
Ali
yeah.
Bernabia.
Yeah.
That was when they were having a nice time, I think.
Yeah.
Souness as well. I think Souness is the main one for me, just in terms of how he dominated games of football, how he put the fear of God into players. You know, things like when he headbutted the fella in was it Romania or was it Bulgaria? I can't remember which one. It was.
Somewhere where you don't headbutt people lightly.
And there's a great story about he was on the bus and they were all giving him things through the window, and he managed to, because obviously he looked a little bit like Terry Dermott, and he manages to sort of get the whole mob to think that he is actually Terry McDermott, so they all start focusing on him instead. I just think it's a really funny thing. But in terms of just pure football, the way he used to just dominate games and he just do everything by just a sheer willpower, it's a bit like if Gerrard had been able to be completely violent. It just sounds like so much fun when you think about how good a footballer Gerrard was. Imagine if he could sort of do all that. There's a Carragher thing about Rooney in Euro 2004 and The Athletic this morning. He sort of talks about him being like a sort of a raging bull who was doing things that you wouldn't have done at that age, like you wouldn't do sort of when you were 23 and he was 17, and it sort of felt like a lot of Souness's career was a bit like that, and I just think it would have been so good to watch that.
Did you ever see the video of him playing at Anfield for Borough, for Middlesbrough?
No.
That's a good video. Yeah, it was... as you say, violence.
Yeah. Showing he wasn't intimidated.
He was trying to beat Liverpool on his own.
Fantastic. That's
Amazing.
He probably had a good go.
further backing up my point. Then.
Okay, that leads us on then to which of the players that we've seen. I'm going to say under Klopp. So which of the players who played under Klopp that we think, you know, could and should have a genuine shout to be in an all-time 11. So that's not. I'm not going to ask you to pick one. I'm not going to see the sort of defo starters, but we've seen some fantastic players, you know, under Jurgen. But obviously, you know, as we talked about before, there's certain players that define eras. So even in the 80s, you know, you're not a bad player if you're getting in that Liverpool team, but it's, you know, the ones that we talk about getting into all-time 11s are probably, you know, or potentially a Hansen, Souness, Dalglish, Rush, Barnes. I think a sort of solid 5. You know, for the 70s. You know, you mentioned Clements before. You know, certainly someone who is in there, and you know, of the guys we've been lucky enough to watch over the last 10 years, Mo, which ones jump out to you that you think, oh, you know, you'd have to be throwing them in the conversation at least for all-time 11 status?
So I think there's 3 really obvious ones.
Oh, I had 4. That's interesting.
Well, I was going to say this. Technically, there's 3 really obvious ones in Alisson, Van Dijk and Salah.
Yeah.
I think Phil's 4th is possibly Sadio.
No.
No?
Is it Trent?
It's Trent.
Okay. Well, interesting. I'll let you get to that later. For me, Sadio's probably the only reason he might struggle is because there's so many great players in his position.
You probably end up putting John
Basically,
Barnes
John
there,
Barnes,
yeah,
basically.
Exactly.
John
Yeah,
Barnes.
it's one of them. And like, I love Sadio, but at front of the elite, he's going to lose that about 10 times.
But
out of
we
10.
did take the conversation, didn't we?
But yeah, I think in terms of being... So when you look back in 10, 15, 20 years at the Klopp era, I think that those 4, and I also have to say Trent as well, would be the first players you think of when you think of the players who defined that era, and it would be unfair on some others who were really important as well. I think of Robbo, I think of Gini Wijnaldum, for example. I think of Henderson, who were important.
Fabinho as well for this level, yeah.
But if you're going to say who's like your top 5 OG Klopp team, there, and I mean Firmino as well. I've not even mentioned Bobby. God,
but there's a lot of good strikers.
He probably, and this is sounds mad, he'd be happy with the top 10.
Yeah,
for strikers for Liverpool, yeah.
So yeah,
you think even in our life,
that's not a slight on him, exactly.
Yeah, you got Torres, you got Suarez, you got Farley. It's unbelievable.
Yeah. No, he'd understand.
You'd understand.
Haven't you mentioned Keegan?
Yeah, well, exactly.
There's a lot of people.
I sort of think that you can narrow it down. So it, like if you're talking goalies, then just from the ones that Phil just said, because it was very similar to my list. If you're talking goalies, Alisson may be the finest goalkeeper we've ever had, but I think he might get knocked out of the team on medals by Clements, possibly.
But then if you
literally banging him out the way with the medals,
Alisson hasn't. Maybe I don't know. But it's a toss up. I think possibly between them two. But he might get knocked out just on the medal count by Clements. And the funny thing is, I think Trent's there almost because of a sort of the opposite in a sense, because we haven't had that many amazing right backs. So I think,
and how fullbacks have changed over time in football. Like, because let's be honest, there's probably nobody from a purely footballing point of view who's played right back for Liverpool.
Yeah.
Bar the short period where Steven Gerrard played right back for Liverpool, who can touch Trent on like pure footballing ability.
And I think midfield and up front, it sort of maybe depends on your formation, kind of. But I sort of think that maybe we've had better midfielders and better strikers than in the Klopp era. So it just, I guess, leaves Virgil. I think walks in. I really do. I think Virgil's in the team.
Salah as well, obviously. If you're playing 4-3, if you're off the right, it's Salah. I think we're in the era where you just have to play 4-3-3. I would think now. So I think you probably got to play Salah, Barnes, and then whoever your striker of choice is.
Our record goal scorer.
Yeah, it's probably a rush. Yeah. Again, by weight.
Yeah. And then midfield, you're talking Souness, Gerrard, and then a third. I think the third is a floater. Like, I asked my dad this once, and he said Jan Molby, whereas Jan Molby would be not some people's by a considerable distance.
Well, you talk about players who won Football of the Year. Terry McDermott won it one year. Absolutely brilliant player.
He's one I'd love to have seen, actually.
Yeah.
I'd be tempted to cheat and throw Kenny in as a midfielder. But that's a whole other
We'd have to get Kenny in somewhere, and we didn't pick him.
Exactly.
So I think you'd have to. I think if he had
I forgot Kenny Dalglish existed. This is mad,
I think if he had Souness and Gerrard alongside him, I think he could play sense. He could David Silva it all over the place.
Get Trent inverted into midfield as well.
Now we're talking.
Loads of space, absolutely. But it's nice just to sort of start finishing off, Phil. It's I feel that we're at a football club that celebrates its legends really well, and I'm not saying other football clubs don't. We're obviously less involved in them and stuff like that, but you feel like, I don't know, you'd think and you'd hope that someone like Hansen, and not just Hansen, very much sort of has felt the love of Liverpool fans throughout his time. And I was listening to an interesting podcast the other night. It was the Sports Agents ones, actually. They were talking about legacy and talking about protecting your legacy. And it was Paul Dalglish who was talking about it. And listen, he knows all about it with his dad. And I think sometimes I'm talking about society here generally. Like we celebrate people when they die, and it's a real shame because so people sort of live, and then when they die, everyone sort of says how great they are. I think Liverpool as a city and also as a football club are pretty good at telling people how great they are when they're around, and we've done that today with Alan Hansen. And we do that generally, and I'm pleased we've got as many legends as we have, but I'm also pleased that hopefully they know they are when they're here, and obviously when they come back, the fantastic reception that so many Liverpool players have got, not just legends, is a nice thing.
Yeah, like I was happy that they named the stand, the Kenny Dalglish stand, when he was there to see it, and he was able to do things with his family.
And he sits opposite, so he looks at it.
Well, it's a weird thing. So on Hansen in the Dalglish stand, I think it might have been the Barcelona game. He was just sat in the stand.
Yeah.
It was on because I sit very close to where UEFA have quite a lot of tickets for the Champions League game.
Yeah.
And I saw him, and he was. I'm pretty sure it might not have been next to, but he was also sat next to Josh Norman, who used to play for the Washington NFL team and the Carolina Panthers, which just felt like a really bizarre combination to me.
Probably talking about golf.
It's like,
Met for a pint before.
I was aware I was in a very small number of people over there who would have any idea who Josh Norman is, but it was still very peculiar that he was basically sat next to Alan Hansen.
You're trying to explain it to people.
Amazing.
It's just, as I say, it's nice that they're able to see things like that, because other clubs, it's a bit like, oh, we'll sort it later, and it just doesn't feel right. Whereas this, we seem to do. I think we do stuff like that very well, and I feel like one thing the owners have done very well is sort of be aware of what they've got in terms of the history and use it well. Something they don't do brilliantly, but in terms of that, I feel like they do it very well.
Yeah, and it's finding a way, Adam, isn't it, to focus on the now and the future, and focus on winning, you know, with also having nods to the past. And it can be a little bit of a difficult balance, and I appreciate it, but I don't feel like Liverpool is a club that lives in the past. I think, like, as a supporter base and as a team, you know, they very much want to win because they want to win, but also they feel like it's just adding to the legends of this football club, and we're a team that wants to create new ones, I think, as much as we want to celebrate the existing ones.
I think we're a storytelling place, and I think that gets confused with living in the past. I think we're quite happy to tell stories of something that happened 10 minutes ago.
Do you remember when we went for that pint just before?
Yeah, do you remember when you just told that story 10 minutes ago? Let's tell the story of when you just told that story. Yeah, so that is part of what, and John knows exactly what I'm talking about, because that is something that we kind of laugh about, celebrating each other, you know, celebrating the kind of the fun of it all, and celebrating something that's literally just happened sort of down the road while we were all, you know, all in the stadium. It's all part of the same thing, and I think it does potentially get up people's noses. I was thinking yesterday about how Alan Bennett suddenly slagged off Liverpool for telling too many stories about itself. Do you remember that?
Yeah.
Weird. Anyway, I think
Alan Bennett's on his own way far too long.
Didn't have Alan Bennett on my bingo card for Monday morning.
But I think he's talking about the thing I'm talking about, but it gets up people's noses a bit, and I like that as well. I don't mind getting up people's noses, because, you know, why shouldn't we talk about ourselves? More people should. You know, I think maybe that's the thing. If you're getting envious about how your city or your place doesn't talk about itself, then start talking about it. You know, I'm sure your place is good too.
Tell your own stories.
Yeah,
I think that's the thing, isn't it? Because in the face of a lot of other people's criticism, there are lots of places and teams who would maybe stop doing it as much. Whereas we're like, no, we are right. You all are wrong. This is what we want to do. This is how we want to do it. And like you say, the fact that these people are still there to see it and to feel it, and to be like, well, okay, what I did at this massive club mattered. And that's kind of goes back to what Adam says about why we want to continue to tell stories, because we all remember those stories that we heard when we were first getting into this football club, but we all want to be a part of the new ones. We all want to be able to tell people about the stories that we lived through. And I think that has to be a part of how you bring in new fans year in, year after year, generation after generation. It's about having Alan Hansen, and then having the Virgil van Dijk, and then having the next one. Maybe kids will be talking about Gerald Quansah in the next 10, 15 years in the same way we talk about those two. And the football club and the life that it kind of breeds in us has to always continue on and on and on.
Yeah, and it will, because it is the best football club to support. It looks like the best football club to play for, but it's certainly the best club to sit in the stands. Hope you've enjoyed that. Obviously, all our best to Alan and his family, and we'll keep producing these fantastic legends of this wonderful club. Up to Reds.